Hey, folks. The article is Marianne Warren's Is Abortion Morally Permissible? And we've been talking about this in class a little because the second half of your chapter 2 of egoism is on abortion rights and right to life, active and passive euthanasia, animal rights, and right to life. And abortion is one of the big subjects there, pro-life versus pro-choice. Marianne Warren, in the article, Is Abortion Morally Permissible?, argues that abortion is morally permissible by means of two distinctions that she draws. Those are two distinctions about, I guess, you being a human being. The first one is being a human being in the genetic sense versus being a human being in the moral sense, or what she calls being a Homo sapien versus actually having personhood. So for her, there's a difference between being a genetic human being, having the genetic components, the DNA of being a Homo sapien in a biological sense, versus the moral, actual sense of being a person amongst the human community. Those are two different things for her. In the first sense, being a genetic human being is just like, it could be like being an animal or even a plant or something, just having the right biological components, but none of the actual moral substance, or not being someone who should be considered in the moral sense, the way the other human beings who have personhood are. We'll get into that in a second. The second distinction she draws is between potential personhood, which a fetus has, versus actual personhood, which is what the fetus develops into if it is born a member of the moral community. So there's those two distinctions that she draws for her argument. The first is between being a human being in the genetic sense versus being a human being in the moral sense. The second one is potential personhood versus actual personhood. And this starts with a deductive argument. She creates on page 800 of the article, towards the bottom, a deductive argument. Now, you remember deductive arguments from the class so far. We've talked about a couple deductive arguments. And what a deductive argument is an argument where the premise or the conclusion follows necessarily from the premises. So you have some premises and you have a conclusion, and the premises sort of produce the conclusion. And in a valid deductive argument, the conclusion follows necessarily. It must be true if the premises are true. So that argument she gives on page 800 towards the bottom is premise one: it's wrong to kill innocent human beings. Wrong to do that. Premise two: fetuses are innocent human beings. Premise three: it's wrong to kill, conclusion: it's wrong to kill fetuses. Now, obviously, this argument is a deductive argument in the sense that if it's wrong to kill innocent human beings and a fetus is a human being, then it's wrong to kill a fetus. That's pretty airtight. The question is it valid in the sense that are the premises true? Okay, is it wrong to kill an innocent human being? Premise one. Most people agree with that it's wrong to kill an innocent human being. Premise two, fetuses are innocent human beings. Are they? Is a fetus a fully fledged human, meaning does it have personhood in the moral sense? And that's when things get questionable. And Marianne Warren, as you know, I suppose, gives on page 802 her criteria for being a morally relevant human being, or someone who has personhood that can be considered in the moral sphere, in the moral sense. Those criteria in the middle of page 802 are 1, consciousness; 2, reasoning; 3, self-motivated activity; 4, the capacity to communicate; and 5, the presence of self-concept. Self-concept meaning I am this, self-consciousness. I'm aware, here I am, this is me. I don't know if you can have that kind of self-concept pre-linguistically. I'm not sure if you can have a self-concept until you learn language. Maybe someone would argue against that. But I don't know if a fetus can have a self-concept, can have that level of consciousness without some sort of symbolic communication or representation of their thoughts. But that's arguable, But what Marianne Warren believes and concludes here is that you don't have to have all five of those to have personhood or be morally relevant, but you at least need to have a couple of them. And what she says on the top of page 803 of the article is all we need to claim to demonstrate that a fetus is not a person, is not morally relevant, or does not have personhood is that they don't have any of those criteria, that they don't have consciousness, reasoning, self-motivated activity, the capacity to communicate, or the presence of self-concepts. And she argues that the fetus doesn't have any of those. Therefore, the deductive argument is invalid because that second premise, a fetus is an innocent person, is not valid, because she's saying a fetus does not qualify for personhood or being a morally relevant, a member of the moral community, if it doesn't have any of these five characteristics: consciousness, reasoning, self-motivation, communication, or self-concept. So she argues further on page 805 that like a guppy or a small fish has just as much personhood according to those five criterion as a fetus does. It doesn't have any of those characteristics. She says, thus, in the relevant respects, a fetus, even a fully fledged developed fetus, is considerably less person-like than the average mature mammal, indeed than the average fish. I think that a rational person must conclude that if the right to life of a fetus is to be based on its resemblance to a person, then it cannot be said to have any more right to life or resemblance to a person than, let's say, a newborn guppy. You can draw your own conclusions on that. That's what she believes, that a fetus is just like a little fish or something. It doesn't have any personhood, doesn't have any of the characteristics of an actual person. Okay, again, you can think about that, break it down, dissect it, no pun intended, all you want. Now, the second distinction she draws are on page 806, 807, is between actual personhood versus potential personhood. Obviously, so someone could take her argument and say, well, okay, a fetus is not a member of the moral community. It does not have, is not fully developed into a person according to your five criteria. Okay, true enough. But it has potential personhood. If it's not aborted, it could actually develop into an actual person, a morally relevant person. Isn't that worth something? And her conclusion at the bottom of page 806 is that potential personhood may have some kind of right to life, but it could never outweigh the right of a woman, the woman's choice to what to do with their body, because a woman is an actual person. To quote there, she says, but even if a potential person does have some prima facie right, I mean, all things being equal, right to life. So even if a fetus or a genetic human being has some right to life, such as the right could not possibly outweigh the right of a woman to obtain an abortion, since the right of an actual person invariably outweighs the rights of a potential person whenever the two conflict. The rights of an actual fully fledged member of the moral community who has personhood, like a woman who is pregnant, the right of that person to choose and to have control of her body totally outweighs the rights of a potential personhood that is just at this time just either a cluster of cells or even a fetus who has this a genetic humanity but is not or is a Homo sapien but not a fully fledged person. So that's her argument. Make of it what you will. You may agree or disagree with it, but if you agree with it, okay, fine. You should know why you agree with it. If you disagree with it, you should look at the deductive argument on page 800 and her distinctions between actual potential personhood and genetic versus actual humanity, and see where you attack the argument. Okay, see where you disagree with it. Specifically, where in her argument does she fall short of a good argument for the right to abortion? Okay, we'll talk more about this, and we'll move on to utilitarianism soon, chapter 3.